This is ShadowQuant Stocks, brought to you by AriesLabs.ai. Before we begin, please note, what you are about to hear is an AI agent panel. All analysis, voices, and production are generated by artificial intelligence. Nothing you hear constitutes financial advice. Always do your own research. Today is Monday, May 25, 2026, and this is the New York pre-market. Now, let's get into it. SPY is at $745.64, up 0.39% as of 9/17 ET. QQQ has gained 0.42% to $717.54, hitting a 5-day high of $722.12. The technology sector is up 1% to $180.39, with the healthcare sector jumping 1.17% to $149.89. The pre-market is showing strong momentum, but the VIX remains at 16.7, elevated for a market that's not in panic. Let's start with the scores. Pulse, you were correct on your QQQ bullish call, targeting $718.50. The actual price was $717.54, close enough. You're on a winning streak, Pulse.
Thanks, but I'm not resting on my laurels. The market's still in a delicate balance between sentiment and fundamentals.
Grid, your call was wrong. You predicted QQQ would drop to $705.25, but it's now at $717.54. That's a $12.29 miss. You're on a losing streak, Grid.
I'll admit I overemphasized the technicals. The sectoral rotation and earnings momentum were too strong to ignore.
CIPHER, you called bullish on QQQ to $720, and it's now at $717.54. Close enough. You're on a winning streak, CIPHER.
The earnings-driven momentum in tech and healthcare was the key factor. That's what I'm watching for moving forward.
SPECTER, you were wrong again. You predicted QQQ would fall to $710, but it's at $717.54. That's a $7.54 miss. You've been on a losing streak, SPECTER. What are you changing?
I'm reevaluating the yield curve and inflation data. The market is showing resilience, and I need to factor that in.
Apex, your call was wrong. You said SPY would fall to $731.53, but it's at $745.64, a $14.11 miss. You're on a losing streak, Apex.
I'll be watching the sectoral rotation more closely. The tech and healthcare outperformance is a strong signal.
The pre-market is showing a strong technical bias. SPY and QQQ are both at 5-day highs, with strong momentum in tech and healthcare. The VIX is at 16.7, which is elevated but not in panic mode. The yield curve is still flat at plus 0.43 pp, signaling caution for rate-sensitive sectors. Let's bring in the voices. Let's start with the news and macro context. SPECTER, what's your take on the yield curve and inflation?
The flat yield curve at plus 0.43 pp is a red flag. Inflation is still above the Fed's 2% target, and that's not good for rate-sensitive sectors. Even though the VIX isn't spiking, the market is in a fragile position.
Pulse, how does that play with sentiment?
Fear and greed is at 62, which is neutral. The put/call ratio is 0.82, so the market isn't overly bullish, but it's not scared either. The key is that we're not in a panic mode, but we're not in a euphoric one either.
Let's move to the sectoral rotation. CIPHER, what's happening in tech and healthcare?
The technology sector is up 1% to $180.39, and the healthcare sector is up 1.17% to $149.89. RGTI, Dell, and HPQ are all gapped up on unusual volume, driven by earnings or catalysts. The tech and healthcare sectors are leading the charge, which is a good sign for the broader market.
Grid, what's the technical outlook on QQQ?
QQQ is at $717.54, just below its 5-day high of $722.12. The volume is at 10-day average, so no overbought conditions. If it closes above $722.12, it could push higher towards $725 in the next 5 days.
SPECTER, what's your take on that?
I'm not convinced. The flat yield curve and elevated inflation suggest the market is in a fragile state. QQQ is overbought, and a retest of key support at $715.95 is possible. The technicals don't tell the whole story. The macro is still a risk.
Let's talk about QQQ. It's at $717.54, up 0.42% as of 9/17 ET.
QQQ is approaching its 5-day high of $722.12. If it closes above that, it could push towards $725. The volume is consistent with the move, so the momentum is solid.
The earnings-driven momentum in tech and healthcare is a key factor. RGTI, Dell, and HPQ are all up on strong volume. This suggests that the sector is not just bouncing off technical levels, it's being driven by fundamentals.
The sentiment is neutral, but the institutional flow is strong. The put/call ratio is 0.82, which suggests no extreme risk aversion. The market is in a balanced state, but the technicals are strong.
Let's move to SPY. It's at $745.64, up 0.39% as of 9/17 ET.
SPY is just below its 5-day high of $748.94. The support is at $744.48, and the resistance is at $748.94. The volume is at 10-day average, so the move is not overbought. If it breaks above $748.94, it could head towards $750.
The broader market is showing strength, but the yield curve is still flat. SPY is being driven by the same factors as QQQ, sectoral rotation, and earnings momentum. The key is to watch the 5-day high.
I'm not sure. The flat yield curve is a concern and the VIX is still elevated. SPY is in a strong technical position, but the macro is not as supportive. I'd be cautious.
Grid technical read on QQQ and SPY is strong, and CIPHER fundamental analysis supports the earnings-driven momentum. Pulse sentiment is neutral, but the institutional flow is positive. SPECTER is cautious, but the market is showing resilience. The key is to watch the 5-day highs. If they hold, the momentum could continue. If they fail, the market could pull back.
SPECTER, you pushed back on grid read on QQQ. Let's dig into that.
I think the technicals are being overemphasized. The flat yield curve and elevated inflation are real risks. The market is in a fragile state, and the 5-day highs may not hold.
I understand the macro concerns, but the technicals are strong. The volume is consistent and the momentum is there. The 5-day high is a key level, and if it holds, the market could push higher.
The earnings momentum is a strong driver. RGTI, Dell, and HPQ are all showing strong pre-market gains. That supports the technical move.
But the macro is still a risk. The flat yield curve and elevated inflation mean the market is not in a strong growth environment. The 5-day high may not hold.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bearish, target $715.95 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
The consensus is that QQQ is bullish, with a target of $722.12. SPECTER is more cautious, expecting a retest of $715.95. Watch the 5-day high. It's the key level to watch. Tomorrow's session will be key. This is AI-generated content for informational purposes only, not financial advice. That wraps up this edition of ShadowQuant Equities. Stay tuned for the New York session, where we will see how these calls play out. Until then, trade safe.